They told him it was impossible, that a landlocked country with no major rivers, no global water partnerships, and no international loans could never build its own irrigation megaproject. They said the only way forward was to sign with the IMF, accept EU technical teams, wait for consultants, and follow the donor script. But Ibrahim Traoré didn't wait. He didn't borrow. He didn't beg. Instead, he built. And what he built just shocked the world. Stretching over 270 kilometers across the heart of Burkina Faso, a massive irrigation canal now slices through the dry plains, delivering water to over 400,000 hectares of land. No IMF funding, no European oversight, no debt, just Burkinabe hands, Burkinabe machines, and Burkinabe will. The moment the water first flowed through the gates, everything changed. The world watched in disbelief as this so-called poor country achieved something that many richer nations have failed to do: create self-sufficient food security infrastructure without foreign strings attached. But this canal isn't just a water system. It's a declaration that Burkina Faso will no longer trade its future for foreign signatures. A declaration that Africa is ready to engineer its own salvation. And that declaration is echoing far beyond the region. Inside the country, farmers danced beside the flow. Women carried buckets of clean irrigation water where none had ever reached. Children walked along the concrete banks, pointing to the machines and saying, "We made this." The pride was instant, but more importantly, the impact was real. Over 6,000 new farming cooperatives were registered within the first 4 months. Grain output doubled in 2 regions. Tomatoes, onions, rice, once imported in bulk, are now being grown locally with surplus. Traoré didn't just promise food sovereignty. He poured it through the canal and the people drank it. But this wasn't magic. It was planning. Strategic, silent, and local. Instead of flying abroad to beg, Traoré stayed home to mobilize. Retired engineers were recalled, military logistics teams were repurposed. Youth brigades were formed to clear land. Cement was sourced locally, construction equipment retrofitted, and every piece of this canal was documented and measured by Burkinabe minds. No external contractor touched it, and that was intentional. Because Traoré wanted this project to be more than functional. He wanted it to be psychological. For decades, the people had been taught to wait for development, to expect it from outsiders, to see their own hands as too weak to hold their destiny. This canal destroys that lie. If this first drop of the story has already inspired you, comment it, "We build our flow." And like this video, because what happens next isn't just about water, it's about power. The kind you pour, the kind you grow, and the kind you never let be sold again. As the water flowed and the canal stretched wider through villages and valleys, something deeper began to move across the nation. Belief. The kind of belief that doesn't come from slogans or handouts, but from soil touched by change. In the early stages, many thought it was just another campaign promise, another drawing on paper. But the day the first machines arrived, people understood. This was different. Traoré did not speak much about it. He let the dust from the excavators speak for him, and that silence became sacred. Every dig, every pour of concrete, every plank laid across the irrigation trench sent one message: we are no longer waiting. People came not just to watch, but to work. Teachers brought students to witness construction. Farmers donated land without compensation. Local youth formed security brigades to guard the site at night. This wasn't just a government project, it was a public mission. And that is where Traoré's genius truly showed. He didn't hire foreign firms, he hired faith. Faith in local builders, faith in forgotten experts, faith in the idea that development should not come in a suitcase, it should grow from the ground. But the outside world didn't cheer. Instead, they worried. A World Bank spokesperson called it an unsupervised effort with unproven standards. An EU agriculture envoy said African irrigation should follow global frameworks. But Traoré had a different framework, his people. He knew that what they lacked in certifications, they made up for in commitment, and the results proved him right. Water now reaches villages that have never seen a tap. Entire fields once left dry are now green. Hunger is declining, not from food aid, but from local harvest. Markets are filled with Burkinabe-grown produce. And most importantly, the mindset has shifted. No one asks who gave this to us. They ask, when do we build the next one? That question alone is revolution. Because when people stop seeing development as charity and start seeing it as continuity, they stop bowing and start building. Traoré's decision not to involve IMF loans wasn't just economic, it was symbolic. He knew debt brings direction, and not the people's direction. By refusing foreign funding, he made sure the blueprints belonged to Burkina Faso alone. Every step, every mistake, every improvement, which became part of national ownership. And in doing so, he redefined what leadership looks like. Not loud, not flashy, not Western approved, but rooted, responsible, and relentless. This canal was more than a structure. It became a mirror showing people what they're truly capable of when the middlemen are more removed. If you feel the power of this transformation, comment, "We build without permission." Like this video and let others see that water is just the beginning. The real flow is freedom. As word of the canal spread across Burkina Faso, it didn't stop at provincial borders. It crossed into neighboring countries, traveled through WhatsApp groups, diaspora networks, regional radio, and Pan-African forums. Leaders in Mali, Niger, Togo began asking, how did they do it? Journalists flew in to take pictures of villagers standing beside concrete trenches that carried not just water but pride. The canal became a symbol, not just of irrigation, but of imagination. That a country written off as unstable, poor, and underdeveloped could pull off something so vast without any foreign financial institutions shocked the continent. But for Traoré, the real shock was why anyone found it shocking at all. He said in a closed briefing, if we can dig graves with our bare hands, why can't we dig canals with our machines? That statement spread like wildfire, printed on shirts, painted on murals, repeated in village meetings. It was a reclamation, not just of land, but of logic. Because Africa had been conditioned to think big things came from big checks, not big will. This canal turned that equation upside down. And the most powerful part? There was no foreign flag at the inauguration, no IMF delegate in a suit, no EU ribbon to cut, just community elders, engineers in dust-covered uniforms, barefoot children, and Traoré in a simple shirt. No podium, just presence, no performance, just progress. Meanwhile, the West tried to reframe the story. Burkina Faso risks technical errors without international expertise, read one article. Another claimed unregulated development may cause environmental issues. But these criticisms rang hollow because the people on the ground knew what the critics didn't. The land had been studied. The flow had been calculated. Local ecologists had mapped the routes. Burkinabe hydrologists, long unemployed or underused, were suddenly national assets. Traoré didn't ignore expertise. He redirected it inward. And that is what truly unsettled global powers. Not the canal's size, but its source, its independence. Because a canal without foreign loans is a canal without control. And a country that controls its water can feed its people, resist economic blackmail, and plan beyond election cycles. That's what scared them. Not concrete, but continuity. The idea that Burkina Faso wasn't just rising, it was stabilizing. And in a world where African instability fuels foreign influence, stability is rebellion. But Traoré didn't stop at symbolism. He announced plans to replicate the project across other regions, launched training programs to teach the canal model in universities, published the design blueprints open source in 3 languages. Let them copy, he said. That's the point. Because this wasn't about pride, it was about power, shared power, structured power. The kind of power that doesn't show off, it shows up. If this vision resonates with you, comment, "We share what we build." Like this video and let others know, when water flows without permission, freedom grows without apology. The first season after the canal opened, something remarkable happened. Burkina Faso no longer needed to import onions. The same dusty fields once written off as barren now glistened with rows of green. Tomatoes overflowed from market baskets. Rice paddies shimmered where once only dry grass stood. And with every harvest, the idea of dependency began to rot. For decades, Burkina Faso had spent millions importing basic food staples from nations no more fertile, no more capable, but more organized under foreign direction. Traoré flipped that script. He showed that it was never about the soil, it was always about sovereignty. And water brought sovereignty home, not just to state buildings, but to villages, to co-ops, to schools, to the women who now farmed with pride and profit. The ripple effects went beyond the farms. Local food prices stabilized. Inflation dropped in rural markets. Youth who once fled to cities in search of work now returned to reclaim land. Abandoned villages lit up at night, powered by solar mini-grids funded not by NGOs, but by community reinvestment. Because with production came profit, and with profit came independence. That's why Traoré didn't stop at farming. He built processing plants, grain mills, tomato canning centers, onion drying hubs, every one of them owned by local cooperatives. No foreign shareholders, no offshore accounts. The wealth stayed home, and for the first time, so did the future. But this was more than economics. It was emotional. Elders who had lived through food rations now sat beneath mango trees, watching their grandchildren eat from bowls filled with local produce. One elder said, "We no longer pray for rain, we manage it." That mindset shift was irreversible. The people weren't just eating, they were owning. And ownership, once tasted, is addictive. The youth began innovating around the canal. Mobile apps to monitor water flow. Simple sensors made from salvaged electronics to prevent leakage. Aquaponic systems combining fish and crops. Traoré's team encouraged it all, offering microgrants for any idea that helped the land feed itself. This wasn't charity, it was investment. In brains, in hands, in hearts. Meanwhile, former aid workers, stunned by the speed and scale, quietly began studying the project. Some visited under false titles, others requested reports. But what they really wanted to know was this: how did he do it without us? The answer wasn't hidden, it was everywhere. In every muddy boot, every field note, every village ledger showing earnings up, imports down, confidence rising. Traoré had rewritten the development model, one canal at a time. No waiting for conferences, no compliance checklists, just action rooted in reality. If this vision of self-fed, self-led progress inspires you, comment, "We feed our future." Like this video and show the world, Africa doesn't need saving, it needs space to grow. The canal didn't just water fields, it watered identity. Because as Burkina Faso bloomed, so did the people's understanding of who they were and what they could become. In classrooms, teachers replaced old textbooks filled with foreign models of development and began teaching from the ground up, literally. Diagrams of the canal hung beside maps. Lessons in physics used water flow measurements. Art students sketched irrigation systems as national pride. For the first time, children grew up seeing progress they could touch, and that changed everything. Pride became practical, and practicality bred purpose. Farmers began naming their fields after national heroes. Poets wrote verses about the sound of flowing water, replacing the silence of empty bellies. Musicians composed songs about the new harvest, and the canal became more than concrete. It became culture. One lyric spread across the region: "No more aid, we irrigate." That line became a chant, a tattoo, a truth. Meanwhile, women who had once been left behind by development were now leading it. Over 60% of new farming cooperatives were female-led. These women weren't just tilling land, they were managing logistics, operating machinery, running finance. Their voices echoed in markets, in boardrooms, and around community fires. "The canal fed our land," one woman said, "but it freed our hands too." And that freedom was dangerous, to the old order. Because aid programs had always preferred dependency, it kept consultants employed, meetings ongoing, budgets renewable. But this canal made all of that look slow, bloated, and irrelevant. Here was a government that didn't need 10 years of study to dig. It needed 10 weeks of commitment. And in those 10 weeks, it outperformed decades of paper promises. The international development community didn't know how to react. Some praised it in public, but criticized it in private. Others called it unsustainable without even visiting. A few tried to offer retroactive partnership deals, but Traoré declined. If you couldn't help us start, he said, you won't be needed at the finish. That wasn't arrogance, it was clarity, because he understood the difference between solidarity and surveillance. Burkina Faso didn't want validation, it wanted velocity, and the canal was delivering it. Every drop of water carried a message. We are not waiting, we are not renting our progress, we are writing it in our language, on our land, with our tools. And the people knew it. That's why vandalism disappeared near project zones. Crime dropped in canal regions. Children walked to school on footpaths paved by local crews. Even in hard seasons, belief didn't break, because now they had evidence, they had results, they had flow. If this part makes you feel that power doesn't always roar, it can run like water, then comment, we flow forward. Like this video and remind the world that when a people rediscover their purpose, no pipeline of dependency can hold them back. The canal was impossible to ignore. What began as a dusty trench had now become a geopolitical disturbance. Foreign embassies sent quiet reports back to their capitals. Burkina Faso's internal development accelerating without oversight. Population confidence increasing. Foreign aid model at risk. Behind closed doors, meetings were held. Questions were raised. If one country could do this without us, what would stop others from trying? That fear wasn't rooted in water. It was rooted in independence. And Traoré knew it. He never bragged, never taunted, but he moved with purpose. Every week, new feeder canals extended the reach. Micro dams were built by local engineers using local rock and simple physics. Villagers now regulated their own flow through cooperative councils, voting on schedules and sharing maintenance duties. There were no middlemen, just responsibility. And that scared those who made careers out of middlemanship. International agencies that once held exclusive control over development metrics found themselves sidelined. Their reports no longer matched the reality on the ground. They said hunger persists, but food was visible in markets. They said infrastructure was lacking, but roads were being built beside the canal. They said the model was unsustainable, but it sustained itself without them. This contradiction cracked the illusion. Global development had always painted African success as a foreign-led miracle, but Traoré's canal was a local masterpiece, and it exposed something far more dangerous than corruption. It exposed capacity. That's why the narrative attacks began. Western media labeled the canal Traoré's gamble. Articles claimed it was built too fast, too rough, too unverified. Some called it a vanity project. Others accused the government of rejecting helpful oversight. But none of it stuck, because the people didn't need media to interpret their own experience. They were living it. Fields were green, markets were full, children were healthy. No headline could erase that. And for every attack, more unity emerged. The people saw that when they built for themselves, the world grew nervous. And that nervousness was proof that they were on the right path. So Traoré doubled down, not in defiance, but in devotion. New projects began branching from the canal. Fish farming zones, agro-processing parks, canal-side schools focused on agricultural science. Not theory, practice. A curriculum rooted in reality. The future was no longer a distant hope. It was a scheduled project. And this rhythm became unstoppable, because what was once an idea had become infrastructure. A living, flowing structure of belief, built not with permission, but with persistence. If this part makes you realize that sometimes leadership is quiet construction, not loud negotiation, comment we build while they watch. Like this video so others can see, Africa doesn't need drama, it needs direction. While critics debated, the continent paid attention. From Senegal to Sudan, the canal wasn't seen as just a Burkinabe miracle, it was a challenge. A direct message to every African leader still sitting on donor-funded blueprints and unbuilt promises. If Burkina Faso can irrigate deserts without foreign loans, what's stopping us? That question echoed louder than any speech. Students in Nigeria wrote research papers titled The Traoré Template. Farmers in Ghana formed canal study groups. A delegation from Chad quietly visited the site, not to offer aid but to ask for notes. The shock wasn't just that Traoré built it, but that he shared it. Open source designs, public expense ledgers, community training manuals in local dialects. He didn't trademark the blueprint, he gave it away. And that's when everyone realized this wasn't just a canal, it was a call to copy. A blueprint meant to spread, not to brag, because Traoré understood something the old system never could. True power multiplies when it's shared. And Africa had been divided long enough. Divided by colonial borders, by donor favoritism, by currency policies, by NGO rivalries. This canal sliced through that division, not physically but symbolically, and that symbol was quickly weaponized by the people, not with violence, but with vision. In Kenya, youth groups started mapping possible canal routes. In Malawi, a coalition of educators proposed a national irrigation curriculum. In Liberia, a women-led cooperative raised funds to replicate the model on a smaller scale. No one waited for approval. They began where they stood. That kind of action terrified the development industry, because if communities could build without loans, they could govern without advisors. If villagers could coordinate water flow, they could coordinate economies. And if Africans could dig canals into dry ground, maybe they could dig their way out of mental dependence too. That's what this was always about, not water but will. And Traoré never claimed credit. In every interview, he pointed to the people. They built it, he said. I just got out of their way. That humility became contagious. Mayors stopped commissioning statues and started commissioning trenches. Governors used social media not for vanity, but for updates on irrigation progress. Bureaucracy slowed down. Delivery sped up. The culture shifted. Because once a people understand that their hunger isn't natural, that their poverty isn't permanent, and that their future isn't foreign, they become unstoppable. If this part makes you believe that revolutions don't always roar, they sometimes flow, comment, we copy and expand. Like this video and let it flood every space where Africa has been told it must wait its turn. By the time the satellite images of the completed canal reached foreign analysts, the damage was already done, not to infrastructure, but to illusion. The illusion that African nations must always wait, consult, borrow, obey. The illusion that real development only comes stamped by Western approval. Traoré didn't just complete a project, he cracked a narrative, and the reaction was swift. Foreign think tanks released urgent reports questioning the long-term viability of unsupervised African megaprojects. Some even warned of regional destabilization through rogue infrastructure. They weren't worried about water, they were worried about what the water proved, that Africa doesn't lack capacity. It lacks permission. And now that permission had been revoked, not by war, not by protest, but by performance. Quiet, coordinated, undeniable performance. In elite circles, that was more threatening than any uprising. Because once people believe they can build without foreign hands, they begin to question everything. Contracts, trade deals, the price of fertilizer, the meaning of sovereignty. And Traoré gave them reason to question it all. He never asked for conflict, only for space. Space to build without being sabotaged. But that space is precisely what the global system isn't designed to allow. So the attacks intensified, not with bullets, but with headlines. Reports exaggerated costs. Environmental experts warned of desert disruption. Anonymous sources accused the government of exaggerating results. But inside Burkina Faso, the people laughed, because they were no longer just readers of headlines. They were writers of reality. When your village is green for the first time in your lifetime, no foreign newspaper can convince you otherwise. When your child eats food grown by your own hand, no anonymous quote can make you feel failure. And that confidence, raw, grounded, visible, spread faster than any propaganda. People didn't just reject the noise. They replaced it. Social media filled with before and after photos, testimonies from farmers, drone footage of sparkling irrigation branches feeding once dead land. The state didn't need a PR campaign. The canal was the campaign, and it ran 24/7 without speaking a word. Meanwhile, international partners quietly reached out with interest and dialogue. Some offered retroactive funding. Others proposed technical oversight moving forward, but Traoré declined with a smile. "We are past the phase of permission," he said. "Now we are in the phase of pace." That phrase went viral, the phase of must, because it captured what many African nations had always felt. That time was stolen from them through bureaucracy, that dreams were delayed by diplomacy. But this canal had proven speed was possible, if control was local, if direction was internal, if confidence was louder than caution. If this part made you feel that African delay was always designed and African delivery is now destiny, comment, "We move at our pace." Like this video and let it irrigate every mind still trapped in the myth of needing permission. This was never just about water. It was about memory, about reclaiming what generations were told they had lost. The power to design, to decide, to deliver. Traoré's canal didn't just quench thirst, it revived direction. Because for every meter of concrete poured, a deeper current was flowing. A current of ownership. A current of knowing. For the first time in modern memory, a nation looked at a massive piece of infrastructure and said, "We built this." No plaque with donor logos, no flag from afar, just hands, soil, and vision. And that vision was irreversible. Across the country, people began organizing without permission. Farmers creating distribution plans, youth mapping water-efficient zones, teachers writing local history centered not on colonial conquest, but on canal construction. Identity shifted from survival to structure, and structure is the enemy of exploitation. That's what this canal really disrupted. Not ecosystems, but economic ecosystems built on Africa never finishing what it starts. But now Burkina Faso had finished, and the world saw it, not as a miracle, but as a message to every village that was told to wait, a message to every minister still hiding behind reports, a message to every child who thought greatness only came with foreign funding. The message was simple: we are enough, with our hands, with our pint, with our rhythm. The canal did more than flow, it taught. It taught that development isn't a gift, it's a gear. And once that gear turns, no force can reverse it. Now, other nations are asking the right question, not "how did you do it," but "how do we begin?" And the answer is always the same: start digging. In your mind, in your village, in your system, because the truth is the canal wasn't magic, it was momentum. It wasn't a project, it was a pattern. And that pattern is now replicating, not because someone allowed it, but because someone dared to begin. If this story awakens something in you, comment, "We irrigate our future." Like this video, share it with someone who still doubts Africa's direction. And remember, when a people water their own roots, they don't just grow, they become the rain.